And I just feel there's so many ways that all of us want tools to do more than the simple ones in our tool chest of drugs, pharmaceuticals, and maybe some procedures and things. There's so many ways that we'd like to be able to look at the whole person. And how do we do that in a visit in a practical way?
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians. To overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be, visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone. My guest today is not only a neurologist, she's also board certified in integrative and holistic medicine as well. And as an associate professor at California Northstate University College of Medicine, she's helping medical students learn the importance of a holistic approach to medical practice. So let's hear my conversation with Dr. Rochelle Frank. What a great pleasure it is for me to be speaking today with Dr. Rochelle Frank up in Northern California. Rochelle, it's so nice to have you on Prescription for Success, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me, Randy. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the conversation, and as we always do, I want to begin with your origin story. And I know that you did your undergraduate work at UC Berkeley in biophysics. And I'm interested to know if at that point in time you knew that you were headed for a career in medicine, or was this something that came later?
Well, what's interesting, it's a very good question. I actually went back to my college essay, and the main thing I had in it is that I wanted to be in neuroscience research. But I did write that as a clinician, which I had forgotten. So when I got to UC Berkeley, I quickly became a physics major and really enjoyed my time in physics. And it wasn't until my last year that I started thinking about the fact that I might want to be in medicine, and changed to taking a lot of courses in biochemistry and biology and chemistry, and realized that I'd rather major in biophysics, because my original plan was doing a graduate degree in biophysics, a PhD, and then going into neuroscience. So neuro was the theme, and medicine came in by the end of college.
I see. I wonder if you will be surprised that we're coming very close to having recorded 100 episodes, and you are the very first person that I've spoken to that has a major in biophysics. You want to tell the audience a little bit about what exactly that is? What that discipline looks like?
It's a very good question. I can tell you it no longer even exists at UC Berkeley.
Really?
Yeah, so it really was an interesting discipline that was rigorous, that included physics and some upper division and areas of physics, along with looking at biological sciences that through a physics lens, through a lens of harder science. I can say that at that time, there was a lot of molecular biology, electrophysiology, and neurophysiology. And there wasn't anything specific that I would say defined the field, and that's probably why it doesn't exist as a field anymore. But I think it really includes an approach of hard science to the biological sciences, and that would probably be the way to define it. I haven't thought about it in years, and I hope I'm not misdefining it at this point. But that is the reason I liked it.
Sure. Well, perhaps more importantly, I'm interested to know, do you think it really prepared you well for medical school?
Oh, absolutely. I'd say most of my time, again, at UC Berkeley, I was truly a straight physics major, and learning to think was really useful for me. I feel like that physics taught me that rigor of how to approach problems, and that was definitely helpful in clinical reasoning and thinking. And I will add that when I was doing physiology in medical school, I remember that doing some of the equations and things were much easier and enjoyable for me for that
Yeah, I
reason.
bet. And then the other pertinent question, or at least I think it's a pertinent question, is do you feel like that background really prepared you well, not only for medical school, but for medical practice? What do you think?
I do think so. There's something about the whole background of physics and biophysics that had me look at the way the physical world and the biological world worked. And I could apply that to organisms. And definitely in neurology, there's a lot of mechanics of movements and things that, knowing that way of approaching things was helpful.
And how did you finally make that decision? It sounds like in the early part of your education, you really weren't entirely sure what your final path would be. So how did you make that decision to make it medical school?
That's a very good question. I was working at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, and they were doing, actually I was in biophysics, and they were using the heavy ion accelerator there to do treatment for cancer with heavy ion radiation. And that would give the radiation at a very specific place. And so it was, so that the group I was working with was trying to figure out how to do the deposition into the right exact location.
Much more targeted.
Targeted, exactly. So I think that I was noticing I just really wanted to work more directly with people and not as much in a research lab. I enjoyed my research experience, and I really enjoyed the interactions I had with people and more directly impacting them day to day. And that's what had me start thinking about a more day-to-day career that included people and had more direct relevance to, the world applied right away by me seeing a person and being able to give them something.
I'm glad you brought up that people connection, because my next question is, what about medical school? Do you think it prepared you well for that interconnection between human beings and science?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I really felt, I was at UC San Diego, and I really felt they gave it a good effort. I would say that the culture of medicine, the place I've felt that there was room for improvement, really was that human connection. And that is what has given me the passion for many of the things I do now. So I can't say it prepared me, but I really say it has to do with the culture around medicine as a whole, and not specifically my medical school, which I think actually was better than many, especially since at that time, which wasn't true everywhere, I was in a pass, not pass school. They did have honors for some courses that they added, but there was a lot less pressure in that way. It wasn't as common then for everything to be pass, not pass, which I do think was an encouragement to look at the humanistic side of things.
Sure. And what about the next step, internship and residency? Did you feel that you were in a place where you were immediately comfortable, or did you feel even at that young age that something wasn't quite right?
Well, I did feel that the whole culture of medicine did have room for more of a humanistic approach. In retrospect, I realized I did some things that I didn't even think about consciously, and I don't know if I've even thought about till you asked, which is I was at a program for internship that was, it's now called Scripps Mercy Hospital in San Diego, but it was Mercy Hospital at that point. And it was a transitional year. And I worked directly with community faculty for the most part. So it was a little different than many programs. And then my program in Chapel Hill at the time, I worked more directly with my attendings, and many of them were clinicians, which was part of what attracted me to the program. So I think even when I wasn't thinking about it, I really do think I ended up seeing that I wanted to work with clinicians and see their experience and how I could translate that to my clinical experience with patients. And I chose not highly academic research programs for that reason, without even knowing I was doing that.
Mm-hmm. After your training, you made the decision to come back to the West Coast or the Western United States at any rate, and you practiced at the Permanente group for a good long time, like 18 years with the Permanente group. Just tell me about what that experience was like. Here you are fully trained, and now you're in, quote, private practice. You're dealing with patients who are your patients. Did you feel immediately at home, or again, was there something else that made you feel like you were going to end up someplace else, even at that young age?
I really was interested in the Permanente medical group. I found I was attracted to it because I didn't have to look at the pressures of a lot of things you might have to in a traditional private practice, and that I could focus completely on my patients. And that was something I really liked. And I liked being in a group that was very oriented towards working together in a system where there was it was an integrated system that really we needed to work together to create our goals and give care to the community. And that was something I really liked. I will say that my second chief, who was my chief starting a year or two into my practice, Dr. George Palma, was one of my mentors and teachers, and I very much appreciate all he taught me. And I'll never forget, in my first year there, he said, Rochelle, I know you think clinical medicine will always be everything you need, and you'll find that you might want to do other things along the way, and you can do that here. And I would encourage you to think what kinds of things you want to get involved in that, will enhance what you do in the group.
That's kind of rare, I think.
Yeah, it was amazing that he said that to me, and I really took it to heart. And as I went on, I started doing work that I just loved at the Permanente Medical Group that included the ways I knew some people like Dr. Abramson, which was related to being a communication consultant and work with physician health and wellness. So the whole unfolding of all of that was from keeping my eyes in what kinds of things I wanted to contribute. And it really was like a family, and I learned so much.
And then the time came that you decided you're going to make another significant career move. After 18 years at the Permanente Group, you moved over to academics again at California Northstate University. Did they come looking for you, or did you seek them out?
Well, that's a very interesting question because it was really one of those serendipity sort of situations. I was starting to explore what I would want to do that would enhance clinical work. And I really saw that the main thing that interested me, I've thought about public health along the way. Part of the reason I went to Chapel Hill is my husband got his public health degree in Chapel Hill. And I was looking, what else might I want to do? And I really saw that what I'd love to do is teach. And a series of circumstances led in an unusual way for me to having a conversation that led to me going to California Northstate. And it was one of those things where, I don't want to go to that retirement party. And I ended up going and talking to somebody that I didn't expect to talk to about it. And there was even more to the story, but it was really one of those things that was meant to be.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians for physicians to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. So you joined their faculty in 2016, and right away some of your responsibilities were neurology clerkship director, and I gather part of that had to do with the fact that you really wanted to be involved with medical students. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, the California Northstate is a very new school, and really we are teaching medical students. That is part of, it's a similar theme to what I mentioned earlier, where a lot of the faculty are very experienced clinicians. And I feel like we really are great people to teach our new physicians, what it's like. And what I particularly liked is these experienced clinicians still kept their love of patients and love of being physicians so that we can pass on, and students can see that you can keep that alive for 20, 30 years and still, be able to teach. So I was a clerkship director, creating the programming there. And soon after I got there, I was recruited to help direct and then be one of the main directors for a program we call Master's Colloquium, which I like saying is everything but the core curriculum. And that involves things like communication, ethics, public health and global health, diversity, also service and professionalism, wellness, and healthcare systems. And that was a challenge. And what I really loved when I got to Northstate, there was the opportunity in the room for me to create new programming, and I just went for it.
What do you have any idea where that idea came from, where that opportunity came from? Because it really is, to say that it's anything but core curriculum is clearly an understatement, but it's really revolutionary. And I suspect you're going to tell me that it was just a fortunate concatenation of people and circumstances. But I'd like to hear how you saw it as coming into being.
What I can say is when I got there, the structure had already been established for Master's Colloquium, which was having 2-hour mandatory sessions that were every other week or a little bit more often than that. And part of the structure was we have what we call colleges. So the medical school class is divided into smaller groups of around 20 that they can have their own college community as they're going through their preclinical years and get to know people more closely. So a lot of this course, the curriculum, was going to be taught by the college masters. And there had been some creation of a curriculum that I and another person, Dr. Louise Glazer, followed when we were trying to expand the curriculum. And what we found was that some of the things really would merit a true master, someone coming in who really knew about healthcare or worked in global health overseas. And some of those sessions really needed to be with all of us together and then discussing in smaller groups some of the aspects. So we played around with the curriculum. I don't know if that's the best way of saying it, but we really looked at what we could, what things we could do. And we both had, extensive experience in teaching communication and brought those kinds of things to it. So we just really looked at what was needed. We created in the curriculum committee a subcommittee task force of what subjects to really make sure we cover. And people in the group looked throughout the country at what subjects were covered that were I don't know if not curriculum is the right word, not core curriculum, but we looked what things to include. And we just went through the assigned topics, and many of them were already there. And then we looked at which ones to add, which ones to put together. And we're continuing to do that. We just added a humanities one this year that went over very well with the students. So we're always looking at what can we add and what can we really have be useful, because this is mandatory time. And my approach is, I know this is nothing that students, when they're really trying to learn all this data, that they're going to say, oh, I want to put aside this time. So I really want to make it very valuable. I know that they're not going to remember details or specific facts, but I want them, the first time they're dealing with, wow, I actually did have some experience with how to deal with a challenging patient, or, wow, we did actually talk about how to treat somebody when you're a physician treating a physician, and realize that these are issues that we can discuss, or diversity, or all these kinds of things.
You have an item in there called the M4 Wellness Elective. Now, recognizing that I was in medical school at about the time fire was discovered, there was certainly nothing in my curriculum of that sort. I'd love for you to share with our audience exactly what that is and how it works and who benefits.
I'd be happy to. So I would like to take a step back and first talk about the first elective I created, because that actually is part of what I can say about the wellness elective. So when I first arrived at Kaiser, within a couple months, they had this amazing program where Rachel Naomi Remen spoke to all of us about being a physician, and she really resonated with me. We received a copy of her book, Kitchen Table Wisdom, which is a bunch of vignettes, and I highly recommend it. It's about being a physician, about being a patient, and about seeing her patients, and just all of the different ways that you experience being a physician. All the stories are only a few pages or less. And I started tracking just the kind of work she was doing over the next 20 years. And she started a course called the Healer's Art course. And what I always wanted to be involved in it. And really, the very short time after I landed at CNU, I said, I would love to bring this course to CNU. And I got support to do it. I was actually really grateful to CNU because they not only supported me in getting trained to be a director, but another person. And the two of us spent time learning how to direct this course. And it is a course that has been around since the early 90s in over 100 medical schools, and even in some other schools like veterinary schools. And it really speaks to humanistic care and has been one of the most amazing experiences I've had. What we started with the students almost immediately. The first year, I think 25 or 30 of the M1 and M2 classes, because this is directed towards preclinical, signed up. And now the last class was over 60% of the last couple, 50 to 60, and it's getting more and more. Over 60% of the classes are signing up for this course of a given class. And that really gives people a chance to talk to a clinician in a group of just 5 people and a clinician for over 5 sessions about very serious topics like how do we stay whole in medicine? How do we deal with grief and loss? How do we experience mystery and awe? And staying with a sense of purpose and service as a way of life. And we just completed that course in the last few weeks. And it's again, just amazing. And I always have some student directors, and it's amazing to all work together in this community. So That course has been in existence since 2018. So this has gone for 5 years now. This was the 5th year. And that after that first year, my colleague Louise Glazer also said, we really could create an elective where in the 4th year, people can look back, because this really is geared towards first-year students for the most part. And we had an elective on mindfulness. We had an elective on leadership. And there was a lot of interest in narrative writing. So in the wellness elective, we combined those 3 things as 4 separate courses running together over a month. And the feeling was that each of those would be very hard for students to take as an elective on its own at that point in their medical school training. But if all 4 of them were together over 4 weeks, they could take a really deep dive as they were leaving for completing their 4th year and going on to residency to really reflect and really have some tools. So when people hear wellness, they think it might be kind of easygoing thing, but it actually is a pretty deep dive and reflection for people. We just completed that course 2 weeks ago with the 4th group of students, and it was absolutely amazing, the 14 students that were in the course. The part that was narrative writing, we have expanded thanks to Dr. Marty Rubin, who has created an amazing humanities curriculum, and we included things like improv in medicine. We have a magician in our ranks as a student who's very passionate about magic in medicine, and there was even a noon session on that. There was writing, there was looking at art, there was looking at music, there was looking at compassion and kindness in other ways that were all part of this section that used to be narrative writing. And of course, there was narrative medicine as well. And we had a wellness talk as well from someone who ran wellness for Northern California, Kaiser, for over a decade. So he's also at CNU at this point. So we've just done so many, the students had opportunities to look in so many ways, and they really appreciated this chance. The course was run right before they went for match day. So they had those few weeks before to really reflect after they'd done their interviews, before they matched, and thought about what next steps were there for them. And we used to run it during the time of match, and we realized that it was better to run it before. So it's been a really unique opportunity to work very closely with students who now had experienced some very important life experiences in medicine and can reflect in a different way on some of the topics we covered.
I think it's a really brilliant idea, and I do hope the idea is spreading, because I think it's very overdue, if I may say so. Before we get on into your prescriptions for success, which I'm really anxious to hear, I would like for you to talk to us for as long as you would like to talk to us about the growth of your interest in integrative medicine and holistic medicine, which I think is so important. When I think back to our hero, Hippocrates, there was not much science around at that time, but yet he was apparently a well-respected physician. But we've lost some of that, to my way of thinking. So can you just talk to us a little bit about how that notion has come into your way of looking at medicine today?
Yes, I'd love to, and thanks for asking. I did want to talk about a couple other programs at the medical school that I think are relevant, and they actually are related to humanistic care and integrative medicine also. One of 2 other things that we've done at the school that I feel very good about. One is we created a wellness committee, a student wellness committee, and I really did model it after I worked with Dr. John Chuck for almost a decade on the Physician Wellness Committee at Kaiser. And then I also am working with him now in the Medical Society on another wellness committee, Joy in Medicine. And what I loved is he would always bring each of us to bring our interests and passions to the committee to give to others. And he talked about how all wellness is local. And this is a theme I see when I see wellness programming, that you really have to look at what's going on for your community. So I had no desire to create some programs that I thought out and then just give them to the students. And I had this amazing group of students, about 12 to 14, and said, hey, let's create a wellness committee. And they just did an amazing job of creating programming, telling us what they really needed. And since then, it has only grown. And the group right now is just stronger and stronger each year. This particular group, there's well over 20 students in the class that is currently M1's going to their M2 year. And just so many of them were interested in leadership. It was almost the amount of a committee, like 12 of them wanted to lead this committee. So I just...
That's kind of rare.
Yeah, no, they're incredible. And there's a lot of subcommittees and they're doing things related to physical well-being, nutrition, mental health. We have some national sorts of organizations like Walk with a Doc that we're also affiliated with. There's mentorship, there's arts and music and service and all kinds of things, and even things that have grown and went outside the committee, like doing mentoring. Mentoring is part of the committee, but tutoring and other things. So I wanted to share that because I do think what I saw is when we gave the students, and I just appreciate seeing you so much giving us these opportunities to try new things. When we gave the students the chance to just say, what do you see as important to do? This year, we've had some activities related to Day of the Dead and remembering people, especially refugees, and all kinds of things that happened. Wellness days and specific wellness activities that I've just been very impressed with what they've created and continue to create. And the last thing I wanted to mention is I got trained at Kaiser for leading balance groups, which I really appreciate, and brought a group with a balanced style conversation called Connect the Docs to Kaiser, which just grew organically. And it started with just, locally with our 1,000 physicians. I worked to have it at 10 or 12 sites and recruited about 20 leaders. And then we had people regionally that said, hey, we'd love to do this. And it ended up going to almost every part of the region in Kaiser. And while I was there, I still trained, I think I trained about 150 leaders, and it's continuing to grow. And I just am amazed by it's still to continue to exist. COVID certainly affected things, but it's amazing that it's continuing. And I took those same skills and then passion to balance groups, which I run for the Medical Society and for the students. And there's a balance group that we meet every 2 weeks. And almost half the students have participated in it during their third year, and even created a course related to navigating the doctor-patient relationship in these groups. I must say, I think that's one of the things for people to talk about cases about the doctor-patient relationship that are real cases and exploring what's going on in those cases. Both allows people to sort out what they're dealing with and to create community and to even have some tangible ways to approach things. So those are the other things I wanted to share.
Yeah, and I'd like for you to make sure that people know how to learn some more about that. When I was researching you, this was my first exposure to Balance Group, but it's spelled BALINT, Balance Group. And would you like to tell the audience how they can get online and find out more about that? It sounds like just an incredibly useful endeavor to be involved in.
Absolutely. And balance groups were brought to this country in the early 1990s. And people who are in family medicine often are aware of them. And I would say I've learned over the years that some people actually had a true balance group and some people did not. So I would encourage people who've heard of them to also make sure what they had was a true discussion about the doctor-patient relationship in this format. The American Balance Society, the ABS, has balance groups training to become leaders, and they run balance groups that people can just join. In the last few years, they've made the effort to become virtual, and that has been very successful. And all the groups I run, I started by running them for the students in person, but third year, that was very challenging for them. So now I run them in the evenings around 7:30 every other week. And here's the funny thing. I asked for a Zoom account in 2019, and people asked me, what's Zoom?
Well,
That was really funny because just a few months later, everyone was trying to grab that one account that had existed for the university. But in any case,
if COVID did one thing to us, I don't think there's anybody who is not familiar with Zoom now. Pardon the interruption. Please go ahead.
Oh, no, please. And American Balance Society also runs their balance groups. I think it is on Zoom in that format. So it actually works incredibly well. And I'm now running 2 groups for the Sacramento Medical Society we've done it a few months at a time, but both groups have been ongoing, one of them almost 2 years now. And they're asking me to start a 3rd group. So, there's a real need and a real interest in people being able to discuss these issues. The American Balance Society is the best place to turn, and I'm certainly happy to field any questions about that. There's also a video. I spoke at the Joy of Medicine Summit for our local society where I gave an introduction to balance groups, and that clip is available through their website as well. Well, let me just briefly say something about integrative medicine because you did ask me about that, and I would say,
yes, please do.
Yes, I know I have a lot of passion about a few things. I really saw how much I have practiced since the beginning, wanting to look at the whole person. And what I'm happy to say is there's just a growing community and more established ways to have evidence-based approaches that are mainstream for this kind of work. And I continue to be very passionate about it in the American Academy of Neurology, the AAN. I'm currently the vice chair of the Neurohealth and Integrative Neurology section, and I got board certified initially in 2012. And then there's been a more rigorous board that started in 2016 that I grandfathered into. And I'm going to be the chair starting with the next cycle for the AN in this section, which is starting in this May. And I just feel there's so many ways that all of us want tools to do more than the simple ones in our tool chest of drugs, pharmaceuticals, and maybe some procedures and things. There's so many ways that we'd like to be able to look at the whole person. And how do we do that in a visit in a practical way? And that's really my passion now, and something I teach the students, and look at the placebo effect and look at mind-body work, and how can we take all the different aspects that can empower our patients, and how can they utilize them for their health and well-being. And I would say that integrative medicine focuses on health rather than focuses on disease. So we're trying to move towards how do we give people who have disease the best quality of life. And in the interest of time, I won't say more, but there is more I could say about that.
I'm sure. And we might even have you come back and talk about that some more, because I think it's a really fascinating subject. And one other thing that I'm interested in knowing is you might have some data on this, but I remember a mentor of mine early in my career liked to talk about the fact that in America, we don't really have a healthcare system. We have a disease care system, which it certainly at that time was true. You all at California and Northstate are clearly making some progress in changing that mindset. And I'm wondering if you have a sense for how much of a spread is there beyond California and Northstate?
Yes, that's a really good question. I think that the spread is really happening in my career, and just seeing how much of a community there is. And this is what I encourage the students. I've created email lists, and I'm amazed to say that of the first 2, there's over 30 or 35 students on the list interested in this area specifically. And a lot of people who come to medical school really think this way, and then they learn some other ways. I'd say that most of the major universities in my area, most of the UCs, University of California system, has an integrative medicine department, a lot of the major healthcare systems. And there is a consortium of integrative medicine areas, and there's over 70 or 80 major institutions. And, places like the Cleveland Clinic have taken it to another level, as well as Mayo. So this is really getting more and more. I think these areas of wellness and integrative medicine and all these things are growing, and they're just so needed. And really, they will be cost effective. There's a lot of it that can be.
No doubt.
Yeah. So there's much I can say about that, like I said.
Yeah. Well, Rochelle, this has really been a fascinating conversation. I knew it would be when I read your bio, and I am serious about possibly having you back to explore some of these ideas in more detail. But in the interest of time, what I would like to do at this point is back out of your way for just a moment, and we'll get to the part of the program that I like the best. And I'm going to close my mic, and Dr. Rochelle Frank is going to share with us her personal prescriptions for success.
Well, thank you, Randy. I appreciate that. I gave some thought in this, and one of the first things I really wanted to say is to be kind. When I say that, I actually have something at my desk that says to be kind, and it's mainly to be kind to yourself and, of course, to others. This includes knowing your boundaries. One of the things I find is people really are interested in giving to others, and that's a lot of the reason we go into this profession. But then it's very hard to keep that compassion, and I see my medical students wondering, can I be the doctor I want to be to my patients? I think the main way we can do that is remembering how to say yes and no boundaries. And trust me, I'm still learning this myself. But when we can know how and what we can do, and when we can actually give permission to ourselves to say no, we can stay compassionate, and we can just give a little of ourselves in those situations that we can't give so much. Another thing would be to trust your own instincts. I realized when I was a medical student, there were so many times that I would kind of feel like I'd want to do something a little different than I saw my physician do, but I thought they knew best. And I learned I actually did know really well. And I encourage you to keep those things in mind so that when you are that physician, if you are a medical student or somewhere along the way, to allow that part to show up, because you really know. That also includes, what do you want to do for your career or your next steps? I feel like the best advice I ever got was, we're on a winding road in life, and we never know the next turn. We just know where we are right now and what we want to put our passion on. And maybe you can hear from my story that I always put my passion to where I am now. And it really led to the next turn. When I look back, even at those times of illness and biggest challenges for me, I see how everything connected and how I grew. But at the time, we can't know that. So just really trust that you'll do what you need if you focus on what's important to you. And the last one I was going to say of the three was allow for complexity, especially in medicine. This is something in integrative medicine where we really can look at the whole person. I feel like sometimes we focus on a solution and an easy answer. And I've seen that sometimes when I had second and third opinions, that what the physician missed was they jumped from a few facts to a conclusion instead of allowing for the real complexity of what's going on. And this is true in many situations in life. When we allow that complexity, that dimensionality, the different aspects and the different things, I think we can come up with much better diagnoses and solutions well beyond medicine. And the only other thing I wanted to say was kind of a bonus. Stay curious and in wonder. And for me, this theme has been staying in the inquiry in life. When I keep asking and don't look for answers, but look for what is going on, I can stay in wonder, just like a young child. And I really think this is the biggest antidote to burnout. And this is something that Dr. Remen says in the Healer's Art course when we talk about awe and wonder and mystery, is staying in that can keep us alive and engaged wherever in life. And that's what I wanted to share. Thank you, Randy, for giving me that opportunity.
Well, Rochelle, that is really some uncommonly wise advice, and I appreciate you taking the time to share with us today. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to let our audience know where they can find you with whatever you'd like to share, email addresses or websites or whatever. So you have the floor.
You know, I do think the best email to give would be my direct email, which is rochellefrank@me.com. And that would just be my name at me.com.
Well, with that, I think people ought to be able to chase you down. And in fact, it's the 21st century. And if someone wants to get on the internet and Google Dr. Rochelle Frank, I'm sure they will find all kinds of things about you. And I have an idea that a lot of people are going to want to do exactly that. Rochelle, it has been a great pleasure speaking with you today. And thank you so much for joining us on Prescription for Success.
Thank you, Randy. It's been a pleasure being here.
thank you so much for joining us today. As always, we really appreciate a review from you, and a 5-star rating helps us a lot. These ratings give our show much more visibility and help us reach more listeners. And if you'd like access to exclusive content, head on over to our Patreon page where you can see membership-only material, including personal rapid-fire Q&A sessions with our guests and more. To be sure you never miss a future episode, visit our website at rxforsuccesspodcast.com to subscribe. And while you're there, you can offer your very own personal prescription for success on SpeakPipe. As always, special thanks to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music for the show. And remember, be sure and fill your prescription for success with my next episode.